So the book came about from an experience that I had the night before my mum passed away. We'd all just been through the COVID pandemic, and we were seeing a light at the end of the tunnel. It was the start of 2021. And we would FaceTime every day. She was on the Isle of Wight, based in London, and I hadn't seen her for a couple of months due to various government restrictions. And she was 76 years old. She was in reasonably good health, just a few age-related health problems. I expected her to be around, for a few more years at the very least. So we spoke for the second or third time this day. And when she answered the FaceTime call, I saw a man standing next to her, which completely threw me off. And I was like, okay, well, who's that? There should have been no one there. We were, again, in lockdown, and she was based on the Isle of Wight, and I pretty much knew everyone in her immediate vicinity, and I didn't recognize this person. And I saw him long enough that I could describe him. He had thinning grey hair, glasses, possibly late 60s. And as she picked the phone up, he went out of shot. So again, I said, who is that? And she said, who is what? I was like, okay, I just saw somebody there. And she kind of just dismissed the question and started talking about her day. And I had to interrupt her a couple of times and said, Mum, okay, I just saw someone. Who's there? Is it, like somebody like a nurse or some sort? But it was quite late at night by this point, so there shouldn't have been anyone there. And again, she just didn't know what I was talking about. And I just thought, okay, well, I've seen this person, but I thought, well, I must have been mistaken. And we spoke for another 45 minutes or so, and I just kind of put it down to, I don't know, a glitch on the phone or something like that. And then anyway, the next day I got the call that she'd passed away. So it took on a completely different meaning for me. And it sat at the back of my mind for some months before I really dealt with it. I don't know if I took any comfort from it, or it was just a mystery, essentially. And then somebody suggested that I start asking for signs, and I did. And then I started getting them, basically. And then the book came essentially from that experience, and it made me look back at other things that had happened in my life. And it seemed that every few years, something odd would come up like this, like an event that I couldn't quite put my finger on, that was definitely there, but again, it didn't really sort of serve me day to day. I was like, okay, well, that's great, but I don't know what that was. And obviously what happened with my mum, that became the catalyst to look into all of these experiences. And then I began looking into life after death, spiritual practices, and the book essentially documents that journey. So yeah, I think people that are new to the subject, I think what I'm trying to do with it is demystify the mystical, and not trying to debunk it. I'm very pro-mystical, but we all have these moments of inner knowing, or a moment of a gut feeling, or you walk into the room where you can cut the air with a knife, where someone's had an argument, or we can't quite put our finger on these things. And we have all these terms that we use, but then as soon as you use words like clairvoyance or the sixth sense, then people look at you like you're nuts, right? So I want to kind of demystify the mystical and make it that obvious that we all have these moments, but we tend to dismiss them. So I think in writing the book, it was a journey for me. It was a learning process. I was kind of writing the book in real time as I was learning about these things. So hopefully the reader can progress with me, and by the end of it, we'll all be a lot more in touch with ourselves and spirituality, for one of a better word, by the end of it. As for people that are further down this journey than I am, I've only been looking into this actively for the last 2 years, and I feel somewhat of a slight maverick maybe by stepping into the very traditional spiritualist arena, where people have been doing this for their whole lives, and it dates back hundreds of years. So I feel that, I don't know, I don't want to upset anyone. I've got very much reverence for the spiritual community, especially in the UK, where I've learned a lot from. But I do want to sort of stress that I think that these senses are accessible to all of us, and we can all have these moments and go towards mediumship if that's an area of interest. So at the time, I just lost my mum. We were at the tail end of COVID, so work had been sporadic. I was working as an actor at the time, and I just started work actually days after my mum passed on a big Marvel movie, one of the big superhero movies. It was Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, which I've very much been looking forward to. But given what happened, I wasn't really connected with the job. But I was on there a lot, 3 or 4 months or so, and then that afforded me to sort of take a big break, forgive me, and really dive into writing the book. Also, my partner was keeping us afloat financially, and I'm very forever grateful to her. And she was just kind of letting me go through the grieving process. And I started writing this book, not really knowing what I was going to do with it. At the back of my mind, I was thinking, well, I'm probably going to try and publish this. But at the time, it was just an outpouring of my grieving experience, and then also the enthusiasm that I was gaining from learning about mediumship and spiritual practices and stuff like that. So it was kind of a mixed bag for me emotionally. But it definitely helped. It was very cathartic to sort of just pour it out into the book. And I would typically just, thankfully I had the luxury of time, that when inspiration hit, then I could just get on and write. So, if I was working on a 9-to-5 job, that might have been a bit more difficult. But I would say for anyone that is writing, for me, just even if you're at work, just take the notes when they come up, leave a voice note to yourself, and then get on with it later. Because I feel that I can't just turn it on when it's convenient. When these moments hit, then you got to get it down. I would definitely say stop worrying about what everyone else thinks and just get on with what you truly believe in yourself. It's such an awkward time, right? Because we don't really trust anyone, or at least in my day, we didn't. You're kind of unsure of yourself. You're unsure of those around you. And everyone else, all of your friends are kind of feeling the same way. So it's just this weird bag of anxiousness that you're just trying to breeze through and pretend everything's cool. So I would say really stick to your goals. I put off doing the things that I really wanted to do through where I grew up. It didn't seem like I grew up in the Isle of Wight. It was obviously very rural, and we're talking the 90s. So London seems just impossible to me, let alone going anywhere else. I ended up living abroad for 20 years. And then since I've come back, I've actually gone back to those original goals that I wanted to do when I was a kid, such as acting or writing, and now pursued them, and they seem to be working out. So yeah, would have been great to have just got on with it back then. So the book, it covers a lot of areas of spirituality. There's a lot to do with connecting with consciousness and intuition, and then there's also a strong element of esoteric practices, like developing mediumship. So I would say the fundamental underlying thing through all that is stepping back from our thoughts through meditation and being able to recognize these thoughts that we're getting bombarded with all day, and then connecting with what I call the backseat driver. So just letting all that go, and that comes through meditation. And then that also develops when you go towards mediumship. Then when you recognize those thoughts that are just rambling on in the background, and you start to become clearer of your kind of core self, then when something else comes in, then you recognize that as it's not from you, and you realize you're not imagining it, and there's something definitely going on there. So I think, yeah, essentially the book's about connecting with intuition and somewhat dealing with grief, and connecting with spiritual practices.